Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our World War II, the Home Front presentation. This is going to be part 3. We're now moving on to Chapter 17, Section 4. So we should, if you're looking for any extra information for your responses to your essential questions, you can find some more info in your textbook. So let's move on to our vocabulary for this section. First up, we have the GI Bill of Rights. The GI Bill of Rights is going to be a name given to the Servicemen's Readjustment Act. This is going to be a 1944 law put into effect that's going to give financial and educational benefits for World War II veterans, loans for houses, and affordable college education for the veterans. James Farmer. James Farmer is a civil rights leader who founds the Congress of Racial Equality. And the Congress of Racial Equality, this is going to be a group founded in 1942 by Mr. Farmer to work against segregation in northern cities. And this is going to be caused by a shift in population, seeing a mass amount of African-American citizens moving from southern states where they're facing Jim Crow, segregation, really awful things, and going north for better, hope what they feel will be better opportunities and more equality. Only this is going to rub a lot of the local people the wrong way. Internment. Internment is going to refer to the confinement or restriction or movement, especially under wartime conditions. And so internment applies in this situation to the United States' government policy of interning Japanese citizens, anybody of Japanese descent, and putting them in internment camps located across the country for the duration of the war. And we're going to eventually get into the consequences that would come from that. We have the Japanese American Citizens League. This is going to be an organization that pushed the U.S. government to compensate Japanese Americans for property that they had lost when they were interned during World War II. So we're going to eventually have to open up our wallet as a government and pay these people for the inconvenience, for the of causing them to lose their property, lose their houses, lose their businesses. People's lives were completely upended and ruined for years. So people deserve to be compensated for that. All right, so let's move on to the meat and potatoes of our lesson for today. So kind of the main points. The war is going to provide a lift to the U.S. economy. This is due to the jobs that were abundant despite rationing and shortages. People had money to spend. And by the end of the war, America was the world's most dominant economic and military power because of the ability of us to translate our factory infrastructure into economic gains. We're going to see unemployment fall by only 1.2% by 1944, and wages will rise to 35% compared to pre-war times. Farmers are going to also benefit from the increase in production. Their income is going to double and triple as a result of this. They're not only having to provide food for the citizens at home, but they're also going to have to crank up the amount of production that the Army and that the service is going to need in order to feed the GIs. All right, so that brings us into our first focus question. So how did the war impact America's economy? So based on what we just talked about in these previous couple slides, what did the war industry provide to the United States economy in terms of jobs provided? What's this going to do to the unemployment rate? What if people have more money in their pockets, what are they going to be able to do more? So you got to explain that in our essential question slides, looking for 3 to 4 sentences explaining what the war did to America's economy. Also, you should start off your question by kind of looking at where was America at the start of the war? At the beginning of this conflict, what economic crisis were we just starting to pull ourselves out of? Okay, so moving on, we're going to be talking a little bit about how women are going to make some gains in regards to their economic status. Women are going to enjoy economic gains during the war. This is due to the fact that women are going to be asked to go into the factories, to go into the service and non-combat roles and do their part in the fight. So they're going to gain a certain status level, although only to see this lost when the men returning home from war and being released from the service are going to be given those jobs again. So we have over 6 million women that are going to enter the workforce for the first time. And what this is going to do is going to provide a whole generation of women the experience of, oh, I can go out into business, industry, and I can perform my job, my task, if I am skillful enough, just as successfully as a man. And so it's hard. It's an example of seeing 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. When you see women who are given the chance to go into the workforce, they prove themselves to be quite capable, and then only to see themselves replaced and relegated back to what society had expected of them prior. So that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. But although we will see gradual gains towards gender equality in the coming decades. So over 1/3 of women were in the defense industry. All right, so women are playing a massive role in America being able to beat the Axis. We're going to get into population shifts now, okay? So population shifts is going this is going to be triggered by the war. People are going to be moving all about in the post-war period. Also, more than 1 million newcomers are going to pour into California between 1941 and 1944. So our state is going to see massive increase in population. We really haven't stopped growing since this time. Ever since the 1940s, it's been a pretty rapid growth in the state's population to now where we're seeing the effects of rise of cost of living and things becoming a lot more condensed out here. So also African Americans are going to shift from the South to the North. They're going to leave the South where they're fleeing Jim Crow style persecution or segregation as well. And so they're going to leave the South looking for better opportunities, looking for more equality, only to kind of have this rude awakening when that's not the reception that they receive. So before we get into it, what do you think would be the impact of African Americans migrating away from the South during the war years? So think about what we're going to cover in the next couple of slides, what we just talked about. What do you think the reaction of Northern people in these supposedly progressive cities, what's their reaction to mass influx of African American citizens? The GI Bill helps returning vets. So to help returning servicemen ease back into civilian life, Congress is going to pass the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, the GI Bill of Rights. This is going to be huge in providing 7.8 million vets with an education, a college education, allowing them to achieve training, achieve a new style of life that they probably did not have access to prior to the war. But the GI Bill is going to allow these soldiers to better themselves and give them a purpose, better career moving forward. And they're going to be extremely hireable people coming out. The people coming home from World War II are viewed as heroes returning to the home front. And so this is going to provide an amazing quality of life for certain people in the service. We're going to see that African Americans are absolutely not going to receive the same access to education that some of their white counterparts are. So imagine you're a black man from Alabama going into a college registration office in 1946 after the war. They will not register you. You have to go to an HBCU, historically black college or university, just in order for them to accept you. And even then, the GI Bill of Rights may not cover your education because they did not view these HBCUs as being of the same level as other institutions. So only a select few percentage of African American soldiers were able to tap into these benefits. So what were the benefits to the nation as a whole of the GI Bill? And so we're looking at what did the GI Bill allow for soldiers returning home from World War II to do? Were they given the opportunity to further better themselves? Were they just told to go off and like, you're on your own? Were they given loans for affordable housing? You got to explain what were the benefits to the nation as a whole of the GI Bill. And don't just think of on the surface, oh, they got college education. What does getting a college education and what does being able to purchase an affordable house do for you as a citizen? What does that do for your family? And so think about that when you're writing your question. What does this allow a generation of people to set themselves up or set their children up for because of this? Apologize for the brief delay. So back into our presentation. So we have the migration of African Americans from the South. This is going to lead to discrimination. So this goes back into our essential question from a few slides prior. So we're going to see the migration of African Americans from these southern cities is going to lead to increased discrimination or exposure of discrimination in these northern cities. So Congress of Racial Equality, the CORE, is founded, like we said, by James Farmer in 1942. This is a result of racial tensions rising and leading to violence in these northern cities. Riots in Detroit, riots will eventually be coming to Los Angeles in the coming decades. So in the 40s, the Detroit riot lasted for 3 days. The federal troops were asked to call in to restore order. And as a result of this, there were 9 white people killed and 25 black people killed as a result of this riot in Detroit. We see tension here in Los Angeles. We have the Zoot Suit riot. So the Zoot Suit riot stems from Mexican Americans experiencing prejudice during the war years. This anti-Mexican sentiment of their this traditional, I guess, customary style of dressing, the suit, this is going to spark anti-Mexican riots in the summer of 1943. It's going to be 2 nights of violence, 2 nights of people being subjected to just assault on the streets, just walking down the streets for being Mexican and wearing one of these suits. There are going to be American servicemen that are involved in this brawl. And as a result, hundreds of Mexican Americans were going to be attacked and beaten. So yeah, some pretty brutal stuff that's going on in a northern Midwestern city, and then out here, out west, where we're these areas that you don't consider to be hotbeds of racial contention between people. But at that point, maybe, but now we obviously know about all the events going on in race relations. But what do the events of Detroit and Los Angeles in the 1940s say about race relations in the United States during the war years? And what I think that it exposes that the United States has a lot more racial issues than just in what we consider to be the Jim Crow South. I think that what these riots and the way that these people are treated as they're trying to just make a better life for themselves in a new city, that I think says a lot about where the state of race relations are in the United States at that point. So a couple sentences explaining what happened in Detroit, who was targeted, and what led up to these riots and these ensuing.